Hey, it's Tim.
And it's Amy from GoWithLess. We're really glad you're here with us today. For those who don't know us, Tim and I retired back in 2015, and in January of 2020, we sold our home to travel the world. We intended to be out of the United States for 10 months a year starting this weekend. Well, obviously that has all changed, but we really need to understand, how do we get back into living our nomadic life? What does this look like for us? So you're going to get to kind of peer into the decision making that is going on behind the scenes between the two of us. And I hope that you'll stay tuned, because there's a lot of COVID-19, like what to do now kind of conversation for travelers.
So I'm going to start by saying that our nomadic life is continuing. The international part of our nomadic life is what's currently up in the air. When do we plug back into that international adventure? Just like Amy said, we were scheduled to be going to Europe here this coming weekend. That is completely off. Our trip is completely canceled. However, there are some elements of our trip that are still in the book. Specifically, there is an Airbnb in Madrid at the end of that trip that is still in the books. We can't cancel it without paying fees. And at the end, if it looks like there's some chance we get those fees back. If you can't go to Spain, potentially Airbnb would give us the money back. We also have a business class flight back from Madrid, which we were really looking forward to. Likewise, we can't get our money back. It was bought with points, but we have to pay to get those points redeposited. If things change enough, there's some chance we don't have to pay that fee, so we're hoping to maybe get that fee refunded as well. But nonetheless, our European plans have completely canceled. So the first thing that we have on the books that takes us abroad is a trip to Japan that is scheduled for the middle of November.
So getting to Japan was just the very beginning of 5 to 6 months in Asia. We were going to spend 5 nights in Tokyo and then move our way over to Southeast Asia. We were looking at Malaysia, Thailand, places we've been really excited about. So we're trying to figure out what happens as the world is beginning to open up. Now, if you don't have a lot of nomadic friends, you might not really know how other people have been dealing with this who are around the world away from their home country during this coronavirus problem. So we have a lot of friends who've been stuck in their places that aren't home, and some of them tried to stay put. After 4 to 8 weeks, many of them made their way back to the United States, and it was at an enormous cost. Sometimes it was quite scary and dangerous. They had to sleep in airports for a long time. There was no food available in airports. So even though they were able to get home, it was not without significant issues and expenses and just like worry, all of that. So that definitely clouds where we are thinking. And if you don't have experiences of people in your life like that, you might not really know how bad it is getting back. Several of our friends have also stayed in the country. So there's all kinds of people doing all kinds of things. And here's the thing is, there's not really any right or wrong decision. So everyone is making personal decisions here. Of course, we're going to go with what is safe. But the question is what is safe? And that seems to be really up in the air here. Just a little note, where if there's any comments, we're not going to have this be political at all, so please refrain from anything major politics down in the comments, because that just goes nasty. So okay, let's get started with number 1 reason of why to go to Asia.
So our number 1 reason to get this plan underway as soon as possible is going to be what we would qualify as impatience. We have been waiting basically since 2015 to start our plan, to start our nomadic life, and now that we're in the middle of it, it seems like it's stalled. Like I said earlier, we are still nomadic, so we do not have a home. We're traveling throughout the U.S., and we're excited about what we've done so far in the U.S., but getting out of the country, we're really, really anxious to make that happen. So impatience.
And when you say we're in the middle of our adventure, we're really in the beginning of our adventure. It just started 4 or 5 months ago.
The middle of the year, our first year of the adventure, we're close to the middle of that.
Now we're going to take this as like a why we should go is Tim's kind of argument, and why we should not go is going to be mine. Both of us agree with all of these points, by the way. So it's not like this is one person's decision or another, but we're just taking kind of 2 sides of the coin. So my number 1 reason to not go is because it's not a good time to go and visit. Tim and I like to be on public transportation. We like to be in restaurants. We like to go to museums. We like to be in crowds. Who likes to be in crowds? We love to be in crowds. We like the energy from crowds. And so this is not the time to be doing that. Even if you can do it like some different way way. It's not the way. We've never been to Asia before, so we don't want to be doing like halfway Asia. If we're going to go, let's go and do Asia. And maybe Asia will never be able to be the way it was, or certainly not for a long time. But I don't know that this November, I don't know that this winter is going to be anywhere near what we want to be experiencing.
Possibly not. So the number 2 thing for me is going to be healthcare. So we currently have what I call quasi-health insurance. It's with the health sharing ministry here in the States. And we've had, I'd say...
That's Liberty Health Shares.
Liberty Health Shares. And I'm going to say we've had limited... we want more traditional health care. And how we plan to do that is we were going to sign up for a plan that required that we were out of the country for 6 months out of the year to have an affordable plan. So the reason these plans are more affordable is if you're outside of the U.S., healthcare just generally is more affordable, and so the plans are more affordable. So we were looking to have that, and so I really am anxious to have this new healthcare plan in place so that when we're out of the country for 6 months, we're covered. When we're in the country for 6 months, we're covered.
And we could have plans that are in the U.S. 0 months. So that's an option as well. That makes it even cheaper. Now, I'm going to do the other side is number 2. And that is most plans do not cover pandemics if you leave your country. So we will not be covered. And the only way that we could be covered is if we bought the absolute Cadillac plan, which was not our intention to go that route. So I think that we might be paying some very, very high insurance or not covered.
I'm going to say also, it's not just when you're covered outside of your country. There's some chance that the health care that we were looking to sign up for wouldn't cover pandemics related things when you're in your country. So it's just pandemic issues aren't covered at all.
And those are like expat
with
plans.
some of the plans. That's exactly right.
Yeah. Okay. Number 3.
So the third reason we are anxious to leave the country is we have a house sit that we are committed to in December of this year in Malaysia, right around the Christmas time. So we want to live up to that commitment. We want to get there for that house sit, so we are very anxious to do that. I know in this time of COVID, we've actually backed out of a lot of house sits, mutual back out situations. Most of our time in Europe, we were planning to be in house sits. I think there were 5 that we had to cancel in Europe, and that was all done with complete understanding. However, this thing in Malaysia, we don't know whether that's going to be a go or not, but we want to live up to that commitment and get to Malaysia for the house sit.
Okay, now the number 3 reason to stay would be that there's a lot of misinformation. I don't know that we are getting up-to-date, current information that is accurate about infection rate and mortality rate and things like that. So as far as, I don't know that we have all the information to make a smart choice real time. And because of that, I don't know that we're going to be safe making whatever choice that we make.
Yeah, I think that the information that's just coming out, it's hard to know what's right and what's wrong. And so we haven't made a decision. Obviously, that's part of the reason we're having this video now, is just to put out there is our thinking, our thought process as we go through this. And so I don't think that we have enough data points now to make a decision one way or the other. We're thinking that towards early August, we may have enough data to be making some decisions. And again, it's hard to know the data that's coming out, not only from our government here in the States, but also the places that we're looking to go abroad. How accurate is the information that's being put out from these governments? And so obviously a lot of the places we want to go, they have a high dependence upon tourism, and so they want people to be back in their country spending money. And so hopefully they're going to be doing the right things to make sure that everybody that comes into their country is safe, as well as their citizenry is safe. However, I'm sure that they want people coming to their countries spending money. The fourth reason we would like to go is we actually have a great flight. We found a great value with points flight from Denver, which is where we intend to be in November, to Tokyo, and that's sort of what kicked off our plans to go to Asia. And so walking away from this flight would be a bummer because it was, again, a great value of points.
The number 4 reason to stay would be the potential for a second wave. We hear all about the second wave. We might be right in that sweet spot of November through April.
So the fifth reason we're really anxious to get over to Asia is this is the right time for the weather. So it's very hot in Southeast Asia, specifically Thailand and Malaysia. And so this is a good time where it's a tiny bit cooler. In Japan, which would be our first stop, we were only intending to be there a week. I think it's more what you would consider seasonable weather here for the States for November. It's going to be cool and chilly. However, in Southeast Asia, it's going to be more comfortable and temperate. As it gets into the spring, in Southeast Asia, it gets really, really hot. So we're anxious to get there because this just seems like the right time from a weather standpoint.
The fifth reason why it's probably a good idea to stay home is because things are changing so quickly. So who's to say that we aren't in the middle of our trip or en route to another country on an airplane and the rules change? What happens then? What happens if we have to quarantine in a country that we didn't know about until we got on the airplane and things like that? So just the uncertainty. And Tim and I are looking to make a decision here in a few months, but we're still not looking just to like have 2 days notice and hopping on a plane for 6 months to Asia. So we're going to have to make some sort of a decision early. But with things changing so quickly, I don't know that that's going to work.
Yep. So my sixth and final point, I think, is the thing that sort of drives me more than any of the others, and that is my sense of adventure. So our alternative in our nomadic life, if we don't launch into Asia, is we will stay here in the U.S. and do house sitting and do things here in the States and do lots of things that we haven't done before. This is our plan, by the way, for about 10 years down the road. After we've traveled internationally, our plan was to travel around America. So there's nothing wrong with trying to find things to do here in America. I think it's just, I'm really anxious to, as we've said before, we have this addiction to new. And so here in the States, I think there's just less new than what we're going to see in Asia or Africa or Europe or other places like that. And so delaying that is just frustrating because we really want to get launched into our adventurous new life.
And just to piggyback on the reasons to go, if we don't go this year, we're already committed to South America and Mexico next winter. So just pushing it off 1 year, that wouldn't be. We'd be pushing it off 2 years. And Thailand has been at the absolute top of my bucket list for years and years. So we're really anxious just to get to these places that we've had at the top of our bucket list. And waiting for 2 years for that seems kind of hard. Now, my number 6 is flights changing. So say we do get there. Maybe we have a connecting flight, for example. We go from Denver to Dallas to Tokyo, and then we don't know where we go. But things are changing constantly. So we are... Say we get to Dallas and our flight is canceled to Tokyo, well then what? Like how does this work if we're just stranded in Dallas, a place that we don't want to be, without our car? We've really depended upon having our car with us. We were supposed to sell our car this week. Thankfully, we still have it with us because in the United States, you really need a car if you're not going to be in one of the biggest cities in the country. So so what happens if flights and everything are changing and canceling as we've seen them to be?
So it seems like Amy and I spend all day, every day talking about some version of this thing, and so we're constantly trying to figure out when this thing is going to come together for us. We both obviously want to go on this trip to Asia, but we want to do it when it's safe and when it's the right thing to do, and so trying to filter through that with data that may not be accurate, or the data that we have is just, it's hard, and so we're trying our best to come up with the right thing to do. We think that around, again, August 1st, I think I mentioned this earlier, is going to be the date when we think we're going to have enough data to figure out whether or not this is something we're going to do, whether we're going to launch our journey into Asia in November, or whether we're going to be looking at alternative plans. So it's all up in the air. We're very anxious to get going. At the same time, we want to do the right thing from a safety standpoint for us, as well as make sure that we're not potentially sharing our germs with other people.
And one thing we realized toward the beginning of things shutting down in March, we knew that it would be hard to re-enter our nomadic plans. We knew that. So certainly this pandemic has changed everyone's world, without doubt. Lots and lots of things have changed for people, some really tragically, and we certainly have a lot of empathy, and we realize that our position is a really fortunate one that we are able to even make this decision. So we don't take that lightly, but most people are going to, at some point, go back to work. That might be at home instead of in the office. Their kids may be at school at home instead of at school, but still people are going back to work. People are going back to school. You know where you're going to be putting your head down most nights, hopefully all of your nights, you kind of have that known. Well, we don't have that at all. So now, when do we plug back into this? At what point? So for the meantime, we are still here in Tennessee. We have 3 more weeks of a house sit to wrap up, and it has been absolutely wonderful. And then we go to Asheville, North Carolina for 6 weeks, where we have rented a apartment there. And then we are planning to get our way over driving to Washington State. We're going to be on the coast of Washington, we're hoping, in most of August and September. We're not sure how we're going to go about getting there and all of that, but I guess so I don't know if we're going to take our time getting there. I don't know if we're going to hustle over there, but nonetheless, our destination is going to be in Washington State, and hopefully the weather's really nice there. And then we will make our way back down to Denver for several weeks. We have a house sit in October in Denver. We don't know if that will be going either, because the house owner is going to Scotland herself, so we don't know if that is happening. But anyway, that gives you some idea. So here we end up in Denver in November, and what's next? And so we'll see. And it just gives you an idea of the decisions behind people who don't have a home. What are we supposed to do?
Yep. Thank you so much for watching. Please provide comments below about your thinking about our plans and anything that you can provide in terms of guidance, or just what do you think about what we've got going on? What should we do?
What would you do? See you next Wednesday.